My brother was the town's golden boy, but I knew his darkest secret. Reporting him cost me my family, but what I found out next changed everything. You're watching Real Reddit Revenge, and today we're diving into a story about a family that chose a lie over their own daughter, and the massive price they paid when the truth finally caught up. My name is Maya Vance. I'm 32 years old, and half a decade ago, I did the unthinkable. I picked up my phone, dialed 911, and reported my own brother to the police. Just like that, the life I knew vanished. My family didn't just get angry, they treated me like I was dead. My mother looked me in the eyes and called me a family wrecker. My father told me straight to my face that he no longer had a daughter. My sister, Chloe, my own flesh and blood, went on a scorched earth campaign on Facebook, calling me a liar for the entire county to see. I was systematically erased, blocked from the group chat, uninvited from Thanksgiving, and ghosted on every birthday. The Sunday dinners at our old house on Willow Lane, I became a ghost there. For 5 long years, I was completely on my own, living in the shadow of their hatred. But here is the part they didn't see coming. I wasn't the only one. There were 7 other people, 7 others right inside our own family circle, who had been carrying the exact same heavy secret I had. What went down in that courtroom, 5 years later, flipped the script on everyone. But before we get to the justice, let me take you back to how this nightmare started. Welcome back to Real Reddit Revenge, the place where toxic families find out that the truth doesn't care about their perfect reputation. If you're new to the channel, buckle up. You definitely want to see how this one ends. Smash that subscribe button so you never miss a payoff. Now, let's get into the thick of it. I grew up in a small town called Oak Creek, Ohio. We're talking a population of maybe 12,000 people. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your business before you've even finished doing it. If you buy a gallon of milk, the cashier asks how your mom's knee surgery went. The Vance family was a staple of that community. My parents, Diane and George, had lived in the same colonial on Willow Lane for over 30 years. Same church, same social circles, same front row pew every single Sunday. There were 4 of us kids. There was Tyler, the oldest, then me, then Chloe, and finally Leo, the youngest, who hightailed it to Colorado the second he turned 18 and rarely looked back. Tyler was the golden child. That's not even an exaggeration. He opened Vance & Sons Auto when he was only 25, and in 3 years he was the biggest employer in town with 15 guys on payroll. He sponsored the Little League jerseys, he cut checks for the church's new roof, and he always had a smile for everyone. People in Oak Creek didn't just like Tyler, they treated him like a local hero. My dad worshipped the ground he walked on, too. When Dad got laid off from the steel mill at 56, Tyler stepped up and started paying their mortgage, $2,400 a month, like it was nothing. Dad never officially thanked him, but he didn't have to. In that house, Tyler was untouchable. He could do no wrong. Then there was me. I was the quiet one, the worker bee. I grinded through nursing school and graduated at 22 with nearly $50,000 in student loans. I didn't get a dime of help from home. I took a job at the local ER, pulling brutal 12-hour graveyard shifts and paying rent on a tiny apartment just 10 minutes away from my parents. Every single night, my phone would buzz with the Vance family group chat. Mom would post something, Tyler would be the first to reply with something charming, then Chloe, then me. Tyler always knew exactly what to say to make everyone feel like we were the perfect American family. Back then, I actually admired that about him. I had no idea it was all a mask for what he was truly capable of. By 27, my life was small, quiet, and predictable. I liked it that way. I'd hit the clinic by 6:45 p.m., clock in, and spend 12 hours dealing with broken bones, high fevers, and crying kids. I'd clock out at 7:00 a.m., drive home in that weird morning fog, and sleep until the afternoon. My apartment wasn't much, just a 1-bedroom above a local hardware store on Route 42. The radiator hissed, the windows leaked air in the winter, but I paid for it with my own sweat, and it was my sanctuary. On a hook by my front door, I kept a thick, handmade red scarf. My grandma knitted it for me when I was 10, right before she passed away. The red had faded to a dull brick color over the years, and the edges were fraying, but I never got rid of it. That scarf was the only thing I owned that felt like home, once the actual house on Willow Lane stopped being safe. I still went to those Sunday dinners back then. I'd sit in my usual chair, pass the mashed potatoes, and laugh at my dad's old stories. Tyler and I weren't close. We didn't fight, but we didn't bond either. We were like two planets in the same system, but totally different orbits. He ran the town's favorite business. I ran the night shift. If you asked me back then to describe myself, I would have told you I was just a girl who minded her own business and did her job. But that November, everything shattered. It wasn't a slow burn. It happened in one single, chilling sentence I overheard during Thanksgiving. After that, there was no turning back. We were all at my parents' place. The kitchen was steaming with the smell of turkey and pie. I was at the counter, cutting up the pumpkin pie, when I heard a shaky voice from the hallway. It was Sarah. Sarah was only 17, my cousin from my Uncle Leo's side. She was always the shy kid, the one with her head down and earbuds in. She was talking to my sister, Chloe. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but Sarah was clearly crying, and her words cut right through the noise of the kitchen. Then I heard Chloe's voice, low, sharp, and dismissive. "Don't make this a whole thing, Sarah. Just make sure you aren't alone with him." The knife froze in my hand. Don't be alone with him. I put the knife down, wiped my hands on my apron, and walked into the hall like I was headed to the bathroom. Chloe saw me and instantly shut up, her face turning pale. Sarah wiped her eyes with her hoodie sleeve and bolted the other direction. After dinner, I found Sarah shivering on the back porch steps. I sat down next to her in the cold, neither of us saying a word for a long time. Finally, I whispered, "Sarah, you can tell me. I'm listening." And she told me everything. I drove home that night and sat in my car for 40 minutes. I didn't even turn the engine off. I just stared at the dashboard, my hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned white. Through my apartment window, I could see my grandma's red scarf hanging on the hook. It was the only bit of warmth I had left. The very next morning, I walked into the county sheriff's office. A detective named Sarah Miller took me into a small room. She had a yellow legal pad and a very calm, steady voice. She wrote down every single word I said. When I finished, she looked at me with a heavy expression and asked, "This is going to tear your world apart, Maya. Are you absolutely sure?" I didn't blink. "I'm sure." The investigation moved like lightning. Tyler was brought in for questioning within 72 hours. And exactly 72 hours later, my phone lit up. It was 9:14 p.m. I was just pulling on my scrubs for work. My mother's name was on the screen. I answered, but before I could even get a hello out, she dropped the 6 words that would haunt me for the next 5 years. "You are destroying this entire family." She didn't ask if the rumors were true. She didn't ask what happened to Sarah. She didn't even ask if I was okay. Just, "You are destroying this family." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Mom," Sarah told me herself. She was terrified. "Sarah is a dramatic teenager," my mother snapped back. Her voice was flat, like she'd rehearsed this line a dozen times before calling. "Teenagers exaggerate for attention. You're a nurse, you should know that." I leaned my back against the cold tile of my bathroom wall. "Mom, girls don't make up stories like that for fun." "Tyler has done nothing but provide for us," she yelled. "He pays your father's mortgage. He keeps half the men in this town employed. Do you have any idea what happens to this family if you take that away?" I couldn't just stay quiet, Mom. "You should have come to me," she interrupted. "We could have handled this privately. Instead, you went to the cops like he's some common criminal." I didn't say what I was thinking, that maybe he was a criminal. I just let the silence hang there. Then came the ultimatum. "Call the detective. Tell her it was all a big misunderstanding, or don't bother showing up for Christmas. In fact, don't come home at all." "I can't lie for him, Mom." "Then don't come home." The line went dead. I stood there in my bathroom for what felt like hours. My scrubs felt like ice against my skin. My shift started in less than an hour. I put on my shoes, drove to the hospital, and clocked in. That was the last time my mother spoke to me for 5 years. The next morning, my father called. I actually had a spark of hope that he'd be the voice of reason. I was wrong. George Vance gave me exactly 8 words before hanging up. "No daughter of mine would ever do this." Click. 35 years of being his little girl. and 8 words was the total value of my existence to him. That afternoon, Chloe went live on Facebook. She didn't tag me, but in a town like Oak Creek, she didn't have to. She wrote, "Some people are so desperate for attention they'll burn their own brother's life to the ground. Truly disgusting." It got over 200 likes in an hour. My mother left a single heart emoji in the comments. The next week was a living hell. Even at work, patients started looking at me differently. One woman looked at my name tag and whispered, "Oh, you're the sister who..." Then she stopped, but the disgust in her eyes finished the sentence for her. The legal case moved forward for about 6 weeks, and then it hit a brick wall. Sarah was only 17. Her parents, my own uncle and aunt, pressured her relentlessly to reevaluate her story. They didn't call it lying, they called it clarifying the facts. The result was the same. Without her standing firm, the district attorney couldn't build a solid case. The charges were dropped. Tyler went right back to his shop. He went right back to his front row pew at church. He went right back to Sunday dinners. The whole town seemed to heave a sigh of relief. It was all just a misunderstanding, they said. A jealous sister trying to take down the golden boy. Case dismissed. Detective Miller called me the day it ended. She sounded heartbroken. "I'm so sorry, Maya. I believe you, but my hands are tied without a witness who will talk." I just nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I'm keeping this file in my desk," she added. "If anything else comes up, I'm here." That was December. I didn't know it then, but a silent clock had started ticking. The exile from my family was surgical and cold. First, the group chat. I was eating a salad at my desk when I watched my name get removed from the Vance family thread. 27 years of memories and inside jokes, deleted with one swipe. Then came Christmas Eve. I drove past my parents' house and saw the warm glow of the lights. Tyler's truck was in the driveway next to Chloe's car. I just kept driving into the dark. By my birthday in February, it was official. For the first time in my life, my mother didn't call. No card, no happy birthday text. Nothing. The town followed her lead. The lady at the post office stopped making small talk. The barista at the local coffee shop started forgetting my order or misspelling my name on purpose. Small, petty cruelties from people who thought they were on the right side. I wrote my mother a 3-page letter. I poured my heart out. I told her I loved her, but I'd rather lose my family than lose my soul by staying silent. She never wrote back. I sent Chloe a gift for her 25th, a bracelet from the local fair she used to love. 2 weeks later, it showed up at my door, unopened, marked "Return to Sender." The tape was still perfect. She hadn't even looked inside. I had 2 choices: stay in a town that had branded me a villain to protect a predator, or disappear. I chose to disappear. One Wednesday in March, I loaded my car before the sun came up. My apartment was spotless. I'd scrubbed it twice, once because it was dirty, and once because I needed to feel like I could wash away the memories of that town. I took my grandma's red scarf off the hook and wrapped it tight around my neck. It didn't smell like her anymore, but it still had that familiar weight. I dropped my key in the landlord's box and drove 3 hours north to the city. 1 suitcase, 1 box of books, my nursing license, and a phone full of contacts who wouldn't pick up if I was dying. I didn't look in the rearview mirror when I crossed the county line. I didn't cry. I just drove. The next 5 years of my life were simple. I worked, I went to therapy, and I built a life that nobody could touch. The city was loud, gray, and anonymous, and I loved every second of it. I got a job at a major hospital, worked the night shift, and kept my head down. Nobody knew who my brother was, and nobody cared about my family's reputation. For the first time in years, I could finally breathe. The first 2 years after I left Oak Creek were pure survival mode. I rented a cramped studio apartment on Washington Avenue with a radiator that hissed like a snake and a single window that faced a literal brick wall. I ate oatmeal for dinner 3 nights a week just to make sure my student loan payments cleared on time every single month. That $50,000 debt started shrinking, 45, 38, 30, then 25. I spent my evenings hunched over books at the public library and my weekends doing clinicals at a free health center in the city's South End, pushing for my nurse practitioner certification. When I passed that exam on the first try, I didn't have a family to call for a celebratory dinner. Instead, I started therapy every Tuesday at 5. My therapist, Dr. Lindstrom, had this way of dropping truth bombs that felt like heavy stones hitting a still pond. About 6 months into our sessions, I told her I felt like a failure because I'd broken my family. She put her pen down, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "You didn't break them, Maya. The silence broke them. You just stopped holding the pieces together." I wrote that on a sticky note and slapped it on my bathroom mirror. It stayed there for 3 years. To clear my head, I started running. First, it was just a mile, then 3, then a 5K. Eventually, I ran a half marathon. When I crossed that finish line completely alone, I realized something. This is what it feels like to be proud of yourself without needing anyone else's permission. I didn't check their Facebook pages. I didn't Google my brother's name. I was building a brand new foundation, and I refused to let the rot from the old one crack it. Then I met Marcus. I actually met him in the waiting room of my own clinic. He'd sliced his hand open on a piece of rebar at a job site. It was just 3 stitches, but he was so polite, constantly apologizing for making a mess in the chair. I laughed and told him, "It's an urgent care, Marcus. Bleeding is literally why we're here." He had these incredibly kind eyes and a voice that never sounded rushed. He came back 2 weeks later to get the stitches out, and then he showed up a week after that with a question about a tetanus shot we both knew he didn't really need. We started with coffee, moved to dinners, and then spent Saturday mornings at the farmer's market. For the first 3 months, we kept it light. But then he asked about my family. I just said, "I don't really talk to them." He just nodded and said, "Okay." No prying, no, but their family, guilt-tripping, just, okay. At the 6-month mark, I finally let it all out. We were sitting on his couch, and the story poured out of me like it had been waiting for a leak in the dam. I told him about Sarah, the phone call from my mother, the golden child myth, and the box that came back unopened. Marcus didn't interrupt once. He didn't look at me with pity or shock. When I finished, he waited exactly 10 seconds, then said 4 words. "You did the right thing." It was the first time in my entire life someone had said that to me. We got married the following spring in a small ceremony by the river. 12 guests. His parents, some college buddies, and 2 of my work friends. Nobody from the Vance side was even invited. I didn't find out until much later what was happening back in Oak Creek that summer. My cousin Sarah was 22 by then, a junior in college studying psychology. Her academic path had been messy. She'd transferred schools twice and taken a gap year. To an outsider, she looked lost, but to anyone who knew her secret, it made perfect sense. For a trauma-informed care class, her professor assigned a research project. Find a case study or a local news archive related to the course and analyze it. Sarah went to the library database. She typed in her keywords, and then, on a total gut instinct, she typed, "Tyler Vance, Oak Creek." The article was tiny. It was buried in the local Gazette archives from 5 years ago. Just 6 paragraphs, no photo. Local businessman questioned in misconduct allegations. No charges filed. Sarah stared at that screen for nearly an hour. She saw my name in the article, referred to as the family member who reported the claims. She sat in that library chair, trembling. Then she pulled up her browser and looked for the county sheriff's non-emergency line. She didn't call her mom. She didn't call her dad. She didn't call my mother or Chloe. She called the number at the bottom of that old article. Detective Sarah Miller picked up. I wouldn't hear about that phone call for another 14 months. By then, 6 other people would have made that same call. But Sarah was the first. The girl who'd been told to not be alone with him wasn't keeping quiet anymore. By the time I turned 31, my life in the city felt like a movie I was watching. Marcus and I bought a cozy little house in the suburbs, 3 bedrooms, a basement that leaked every time it poured, and a massive oak tree in the backyard that dropped acorns on the roof like hailstones. We paid $2,200 a month on a fixed mortgage. We could afford it because we both worked our tails off, and we knew there was no safety net waiting for us. I was a lead NP at a private clinic now. No more night shifts. I had my own patients, my own office, and a stethoscope with my initials engraved on the bell. And I was pregnant. Our daughter, Lily, was due in May. Life was good. It was mine. But every Thanksgiving, I'd catch myself setting the table and feeling the ghost of the chairs that should have been full. I didn't miss the people who betrayed me. I miss the family I thought I had. There's a specific kind of grief that keeps you up at 3:00 a.m., even when your life is perfect. One afternoon in April, a card arrived. No return address, just a cream-colored envelope with my name in shaky handwriting. Inside was a card with daisies and one line, "Thinking of you. Love, Aunt Bate." Aunt Bate was my mom's older sister. She was the only person in the Vance circle who hadn't publicly attacked me, but she also hadn't defended me either. I tucked the card in my nightstand and moved on. I figured that was as close to a family reunion as I'd ever get. I was wrong. Everything I'm telling you now, I pieced together later from court transcripts and meetings with the DA. While I was living my life, Detective Miller had reopened the file. She pulled out that same yellow legal pad from 5 years ago. My original statement was still right there on page 1. She started making new calls, quiet ones, careful ones. She reached out to the fringes of the family, second cousins, nieces who had moved away, people who didn't drink the Oak Creek Kool-Aid anymore. The second person to come forward was Jenna. She was 20, another cousin. She was only 11 when it started for her. The third was a niece on my mother's side I'd only met at weddings. She was 19, then a fourth, a fifth, a sixth. Every single one of them sat in that same office and said the exact same thing. I thought I was the only one. Detective Miller wrote their names down, one by one. 7 names in total. 7 people who had carried Tyler's darkness in total silence, some for over a decade. They didn't coordinate. They didn't talk to each other. They just, one by one, decided they were finished being afraid. The 7th name on that list would be the one to finally break me, but I didn't know that yet. I was at home, feeding Lily mashed bananas and watching Marcus put together a bookshelf, totally oblivious to the fact that 200 miles away, the Vance family fortress was finally crumbling. You know, there's something about silence that people get wrong. It doesn't protect the family. It just gives the person causing the harm more time and more room to find new victims. If you're watching this right now and you're the only person in your circle willing to speak the truth, I want you to know I see you. You aren't crazy, and you aren't alone. If this story is hitting home for you, drop a comment. Let's keep the conversation going. August came. Lily was 3 months old. I was on the floor doing tummy time with her when Marcus brought in the mail. "You've got a thick one," he said. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Aunt Bate. Inside were 2 handwritten pages and 8 pages of printed screenshots, color copies of the Vance family group chat. The letter was short and Bate's handwriting was shaky. "Maya, I should have spoken up years ago. I'm so sorry. I can't pretend anymore. I need you to see what they said about you after you left. I need you to know what I've been living with for 4 years. And I need you to know I'm done." I unfolded the screenshots. The first was from the week I left town. My mother wrote, "She is dead to us. We do not say her name in this house." Chloe replied 6 minutes later, "She was always just jealous of Tyler's success. Everyone knows it." And my father, total silence. Not one message defending me. Not one "maybe we should listen to her." Just a digital wall of silence. But the one that made my heart stop was a private message from my mother to Aunt Bate, sent 3 years ago. "Bate, if you talk to Maya, you're next. I mean it. Keep your mouth shut or you're out." That's why Bate waited. My mother hadn't just silenced me, she was threatening her own sister. I set the papers on the table. Lily was babbling on the floor, grabbing her toes, completely unaware that her grandmother had declared her mother dead. I didn't even cry. I was past crying over them. I just picked up my daughter and held her tight. I called Bate that night. We talked for nearly an hour. I sat on the back porch and listened to a 60-year-old woman finally unravel 12 years of secrets. She told me she'd known about Tyler since he was 23. A younger cousin had whispered it to her at a family barbecue, begging her not to tell. Bate told my mother. They sat at the kitchen table while the coffee went cold, and my mother's only response was, "You misheard her. Drop it." So Bate dropped it, not because she believed my mother, but because she couldn't handle the thought of losing her only sister. She folded the truth up like a bill she couldn't pay and hid it in the back of a drawer, hoping it would just disappear. "I've been carrying this for 12 years, Maya," she sobbed. 12 years. You were the brave one. I was just too scared to stand next to you. I couldn't be mad at her. She was just another victim of my mother's manipulation. Another person forced to choose between the truth and the family. I made the other choice, and it had cost me everything. Before we hung up, Bates said one more thing. There are others, Maya. I don't know how many, but I know there are others. I know, I whispered. I didn't actually know for sure yet, but deep down, I'd always felt it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was silent, but my mind was screaming. I went to the back of my closet and pulled out a small cardboard box I hadn't opened since we moved. Inside was my nursing diploma, a photo of me and Chloe at the fair when we were kids, a $20 bill from my dad's last birthday card, and that old red scarf. I sat on the kitchen floor and wrapped the frayed wool around my hands. And then I cried. Not the quiet kind of crying, but the gut-wrenching kind that makes your whole body shake. I wasn't crying for what they did to me. I was crying for that 27-year-old girl who fled her hometown with nothing but a scarf and a dream. She deserved a family that loved her more than they loved their reputation. I was going to make sure she finally got justice. The next 6 months were a blur. Lily took her first steps in October and Marcus caught it on video. I got a raise. We finally paid off the car. It was a normal, beautiful life. I didn't call Bate again. We said what needed to be said. Twice that fall, I got calls from an Oak Creek area code. I didn't pick up. Both times, the voicemails were just 4 seconds of dead air and a click. I deleted them and moved on. Winter came and went. Lily turned 1. We had a little party with cake and balloons, and for 1 hour I didn't think about my mother or the group chat or the word destroyed. It was a perfect hour. And then, on a random Tuesday morning in March, my phone rang again. This time I answered. The caller ID didn't show a name. It didn't show a friendly face. It just read, Dutchess County Sheriff's Office. I stared at those glowing letters for 3 long, agonizing rings before my shaking hand finally swiped the screen. I didn't say hello. I couldn't. Renee, this is Detective Walsh. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I sat down on the kitchen floor right there, my back hitting the leg of Lily's high chair. I was still holding a plastic spoon with a glob of peach yogurt on it, frozen in midair. I told you 5 years ago I'd call if anything changed, Walsh said. Her voice was like gravel, steady, professional, and heavy with the weight of what she was about to say. Renee, something changed. My pulse went loud in my ears, a rhythmic thumping that drowned out the hum of the refrigerator. Lily, completely oblivious to the earthquake happening in our kitchen, smacked her plastic tray and chirped, Mama, Mama! I couldn't respond. I couldn't even blink. 7 individuals have come forward independently over the past 14 months, Walsh continued. Every single one of them is a family member. They are all reporting the same person. The details, Renee, they are all consistent. It's like they're reading from the same dark script you gave me 5 years ago. 7. I pressed my free hand flat against the kitchen tile. I needed to feel something cold, something solid, something real. The district attorney is convening a grand jury, Walsh said, her voice cutting through my fog. We're going to trial, Renee. We're finally going to trial. I opened my mouth to speak, but my throat was a desert. I tried again, my voice cracking. Who are they? I can't share names yet, she replied. But I want you to know something. Your report 5 years ago is what started this. Your name appears in every single one of their statements. They all told us that they only found the courage because they knew you had done it first. You were the reason they came forward. You were their proof that it was possible to survive the truth. I looked up at Lily. She was licking yogurt off her tiny fingers, laughing at the mess she was making. She had no idea that the phone call I was holding had just split my life into a before and an after. I still have my notes from your case, Renee, Walsh said softly. Same yellow pad. I never threw them away. I almost laughed, a dry, jagged sound. What do you need from me? Your testimony, if you're still willing to stand in that light. I watched Lily drop a Cheerio on the floor. She watched it fall with genuine surprise, like gravity was a brand new concept she was discovering for the first time. I'm willing, I said. I've been willing for 5 years. When I hung up, I didn't move. I set the phone on the counter and stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. I didn't feel a rush of victory. I didn't feel the weight lift. I just felt heavy. Because 7 meant 7 childhoods stolen. 7 silences that had festered in the dark, and I had only known about one. Marcus came home at 6:12 p.m. The sun was setting, casting long, orange shadows across the kitchen. I was still sitting at the table. Lily was napping in the other room, and the yogurt on her high chair had dried into a hard, white crust. Marcus took one look at my face and set his work bag down slowly, his eyes searching mine. "What happened?" "Walsh called," I whispered. 7 people came forward, Marcus. They're going to trial." Marcus pulled out a chair and sat directly across from me. He didn't say a word for a long time. He just processed that number. 7, he finally whispered. 7. He put his hand on the table, palm up. I slid mine into it. "This isn't a victory," I said, my voice trembling. "This is 7 people who were hurt and nobody stopped it, including me. I reported it once and then I left. I moved away." "You didn't leave, Renee," Marcus said, his voice firm. "You were pushed out. You were exiled." "Maybe, but I could have fought harder. I could have gone door to door to every cousin, every aunt, every neighbor." "Renee," he squeezed my hand, forcing me to look at him. "You were 27 years old. You went to the police. Your entire family, the people who were supposed to protect you, turned on you like a pack of wolves. Your own mother told you she'd disown you. You did more than anyone else in that family was willing to do. You were the only one who didn't lie." I knew he was right, but knowing and feeling are 2 different zip codes, and I was stuck at the border. That Thursday, I sat in Dr. Lindgren's office. The air smelled like lavender and old books. I told her about the call. She listened with her hands folded, her face a mask of calm. "You cannot hold yourself responsible for a system that was designed to silence you," she said. I ignored her and peeled the cuticle on my thumb until it started to bleed. "They were children," I said. "And you tried to help," she replied. "The system failed you then, but now the system is trying again. Don't punish yourself for the delay." 2 weeks later, the manila envelope arrived from the Dutchess County DA's office. Inside was the subpoena. It felt like holding a piece of lead. The grand jury had indicted Travis on 11 separate counts. The Millbrook Gazette ran the story on the front page. It was the first time a Brooks had been on the front page for anything other than a charity drive or a high school sports trophy. My mother, Diane, went into a frenzy. I heard the updates from Linda, who heard it from a cousin in town. Diane was calling everyone. The script never changed. "This is a misunderstanding. Travis would never. These girls are just confused." She spoke about these girls like they were a club, like they had organized a coup against her perfect life. Then my father called. It was the first time in 5 years I'd heard his voice. It sounded thin, brittle, old. "Renee." "Dad." "You need to stop this," he said, and I could hear the desperation in his breathing. "You need to tell them you made it up. You're destroying the family." "I didn't make it up, Dad, and I'm not the one who came forward this time. 7 other people did. Are they all lying too?" Silence, the kind of silence that sounds like a door slamming shut. He hung up without another word. 2 days later, a text from my sister, Paige. One line, "You're going to regret this." I didn't reply. I screenshotted it and forwarded it to the DA. Travis, meanwhile, was playing the victim on Facebook. He posted, "The truth will come out. I'm innocent. Thank you to everyone standing by me." 847 likes, 112 comments. "Praying for you, Travis. We know who you are. Stay strong, brother." I didn't read the comments, but Marcus did. He kept the phone away from me, only telling me about the one that mattered. "There's a comment from your old coworker at the clinic," he said. She wrote, "I believe Renee." One comment in a sea of 800, but it was enough. The town of Millbrook split like a log hit with a sharp axe, clean and sudden. Half the town stayed loyal to Travis. He was the employer, the sponsor, the guy you shook hands with at the church picnic. To them, Travis was the economy. The other half went quiet, but quiet meant something different now. Before, silence had been agreement. Now, silence was doubt. People who used to wave at Travis across Main Street started crossing to the other side. Brooks and Sons Automotive lost 4 employees in 3 weeks, 2 mechanics, the manager, the bookkeeper. They didn't make speeches. They just stopped showing up. At the Methodist church, Pastor Davies didn't mention the case by name, but his sermon was titled Truth and Accountability. Aunt Linda told me Diane stood up in the middle of it and walked out, Gerald trailing behind her. They didn't come back the next week, or the week after. 6 weeks before the trial, I drove to Poughkeepsie to meet with the assistant DA, Claire Novick. She was Navy suits and no small talk. "You're the first witness, Renee," she told me. "Not because your testimony is the strongest, that belongs to the 7 who came after you, but because you are the origin. You opened the door. The jury needs to understand that." I practiced my answers in her cold conference room while Marcus sat in the hallway with Lily on his lap. My voice cracked on the 3rd run-through. Claire stopped me. "You don't have to be perfect, Renee. You just have to be honest." 3 weeks before the trial, I was unloading groceries when I saw the powder blue Buick LeSabre. My mother's car, parked on my street in Delmer, 3 hours from her home. Diane was standing on my front porch. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair was fully gray and she looked haunted. We stood 3 feet apart. "I'm your mother," she said, her eyes swollen. "Please don't do this to your brother. Don't do this to me. You drove 3 hours to ask me to protect the person who hurt 7 people in our own family." I kept my voice low. 7, Mom, 7. "They're lying. They're all lying. Travis would never." "Then let the jury decide that," I said. She grabbed my wrist. Her fingers were like ice. "If you testify, I will never forgive you." I didn't pull away. I looked down at her hand on my arm. The same hand that used to braid my hair and press a cold washcloth to my head when I was sick. "You haven't forgiven me in 5 years, Mom," I said. "What's one more thing?" She let go. Her hand dropped. She looked past me, through the open door, and saw Lily on the rug. Stacking foam blocks, 18 months old with curls and Marcus's eyes. Diane stared at her granddaughter, her chin trembling. She didn't say a word about her. She just turned, walked to the Buick, and drove away. The night before the trial, October 13th, I sat at the kitchen table. The house was settling into its nighttime cliques. I opened my nightstand drawer and looked at the layers. Aunt Linda's letter, the screenshots, the subpoena, each one a layer of a 5-year nightmare. I went to the closet and took out the red scarf. I folded it into a neat rectangle. I didn't need armor. I just needed the truth and the wool my grandmother knitted for me when I was 10. Marcus woke up at 5:00 a.m. He made coffee, poured 2 cups, and we stood in the kitchen in the gray light. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. At 6:30, we dropped Lily at his parents'. She waved and said, "Mama, bye-bye." I drove south toward Poughkeepsie. The courthouse was a gray stone monolith under an October sky. The parking lot was full of plates from 4 different counties. We used the back entrance to avoid the press. The courtroom was packed, 120 people. Standing room only. I saw the divide. On the left, Marcus, Walsh, and the DA. On the right, the Brooks family, Diane in black clutching a rosary, Gerald looking thin, Paige staring at me with a tight jaw. Travis was brought in through the side door. He was in a blue shirt and khakis. He looked smaller than the man I remembered carving the turkey 5 years ago. He didn't own this room. I sat down. Marcus took my hand. I adjusted the red scarf and looked straight ahead. "The people call Renee Brooks." I stood up, smoothed my blouse, and walked to the stand. It was finally time to finish it. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the microscopic hum of the fluorescent lights buzzing above the jury box. 12 faces, 6 women, 6 men, sat perfectly still, their eyes darting between me and the man in the blue dress shirt who used to be my brother. Claire Novick approached the stand. She didn't look at her notes. She looked at me. "Miss Brooks, can you tell this jury about the evening of November 21st, 2021? I told them. I let the words fall into the silence like stones into a well. I told them about the steam rising from the Thanksgiving turkey, about the sound of Megan's muffled sobbing in the upstairs hallway, and the way Paige's voice had sounded, sharp, low, and terrified, when she whispered, "Don't ever be alone with him, Renee." I told them about sitting on that back porch with a 17-year-old girl who trusted me enough to tell the truth, even when she knew it would set the world on fire. I told them about the phone call I made the next morning, the scratch of Detective Walsh's pen on that yellow legal pad, and finally, the 6 words my mother used to end our relationship. "You are destroying this entire family." "And what happened after you filed that report?" Claire asked. "I was surgically removed from my life," I said, my voice steady for the first time in years. "My mother stopped speaking to me. My father disowned me. My sister called me a liar on a public forum. The case was dropped for lack of evidence, and I was forced to move 3 hours away to Albany just to feel safe. I didn't just start over. I had to reinvent myself from the ashes." "And did you have any contact with the 7 other witnesses prior to their reports?" "None." "Did you encourage, coach, or coordinate with any of them?" "No," I replied, looking directly at the jury. "I didn't even know they existed until Detective Walsh called me 14 months ago. I thought I was the only one who saw the cracks." Then came the cross-examination. The defense attorney stood up, straightening his tie with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Brooks, isn't it true you hold a deep-seated personal grudge against your brother? Isn't this all just a play for attention from a daughter who felt overlooked?" I didn't flinch. I looked at him, then I looked at Travis, who was staring at his cuticles, and then I looked back at the jury. "I have no grudge against anyone in this room," I said. "I reported what I knew to be true. That is all I have ever done. If the truth feels like a grudge to you, that says more about the defendant than it does about me." On the right side of the courtroom, a sound broke the silence. My mother was crying, not a quiet, dignified sob, but a wet, ragged sound. My father held her hand, his eyes fixed on the scuffed linoleum floor. Paige sat behind them, her body as rigid as a statue. I stepped down. For the first time in 5 years, I felt the air in my lungs actually reach the bottom. Someone had finally listened. Then they came, one at a time. Megan went first. She was 22 now, her face hardened by the years she'd spent carrying this. She walked to the stand with her chin up and her hands clasped in front of her like she was bracing for a tidal wave. She answered every question with a surgical precision. Her voice shook twice, just twice, but she never stopped. When she finished, she walked past me in the gallery. She didn't smile. She just gave me one small, solemn dip of the chin, a silent thank you. Then Bethany, only 20. She was shorter, quieter, and she cried through almost her entire testimony. But she didn't ask for a break. When the defense attorney tried to trip her up on a timeline detail, she snapped back with the exact date and time. She kept a journal. She had receipts for her trauma. Then the third, a cousin I hadn't seen since she was 9 years old. She was 19 now, taller than me, and her voice was so low the judge had to ask her to repeat herself twice. Each time she did, she got louder. The fourth, the fifth, the sixth. I won't describe their stories here. Those stories are private altars of pain that belong only to them. What I will say is this: each one of them walked up. Each one said their name. Each one told the truth. And each one sat down and exhaled like they had been holding their breath for a decade. Detective Walsh took the stand last. She opened that same yellow legal pad, the one from my kitchen table 5 years ago. "I've been working this case for 5 years, she told the jury. 7 victims, all reporting independently. None of them knew the others were speaking until this trial began." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy. It was the kind of silence that presses against your chest until it's hard to breathe. I sat in my seat and counted. 7 people, 7 childhoods, 1 family's mountain of lies, and 1 detective who refused to close the drawer. Suddenly, something broke. My mother, Diane, stood up in the middle of the gallery. A bailiff moved toward her, but she wasn't running. She was facing the judge, her face twisted in a mask of agony. "This isn't fair." Her voice was high and ragged, echoing off the high ceilings. "My son is a good man. You're all lying to hurt me." The judge's gavel came down like a thunderclap. "Ma'am, sit down or you will be removed from this courtroom." My father grabbed her arm and practically tackled her back into the seat. She collapsed against his shoulder, shaking so hard I could hear the rosary beads in her hand clicking together. "I did what I thought was best for my family," she sobbed into his coat. "I did it for the family." I watched her from across the aisle. This was the woman who taught me how to make a pie crust, who braided my hair before church, who told me I was destroying everything 5 years ago. She was right about one thing: the family was destroyed. But it wasn't destroyed by my report. It was destroyed by every Sunday dinner where the truth sat at the table like an uninvited guest that everyone ignored. It was destroyed by every group chat message that chose a comfortable lie over a painful reality. It was destroyed by every "don't make this a thing" and every "just drop it for the sake of peace." My mother didn't destroy the family by protecting Travis. She destroyed it by believing that protecting a predator was the same thing as protecting a family. The DA stood up. The room settled into a deathly hush. And then she said the words that turned the world upside down. "The people call Paige Brooks." The air literally left the room. My mother's head snapped up. My father closed his eyes like he was waiting for a blow. Travis, at the defense table, went completely still. Paige stood up from the row behind her parents. Her legs were unsteady, and she had to grip the back of the wooden bench to keep from falling. Then she let go. She walked to the stand. She was sworn in. She sat down and pressed her hands flat against her knees, pushing down hard as if she were trying to keep herself from floating away. She looked at me, and for the first time in 5 years, I didn't see the loyal daughter or the Facebook bully. I saw my sister. The girl I shared a room with until I was 12. The girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms because she was afraid of the dark. She opened her mouth. Tears were streaming down her face, but her voice was a bell. "I believed Renee," she whispered. "I always believed her, because it happened to me too." The courtroom didn't gasp. It just stopped. It felt like the entire building had been submerged underwater. My mother made a small, choked sound, not a word, just a noise. The sound you make when something you've been holding for 30 years finally hits the floor and shatters. Paige spoke for 3 minutes. It was the longest 3 minutes of my life. Then she looked at me again. "I called you a liar because if you were telling the truth, then I had to be telling the truth too, and I wasn't ready to be that broken." I cried then. For the first time in that courtroom, I let it go. Marcus held my hand so tight I could feel his pulse in my palm. 5 years of silence, one sentence from my sister, and the golden child was dead. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 11 minutes. We waited in the hallway. Marcus sat next to me on a hard wooden bench while I stared at the scuff marks on the floor. Detective Walsh stood by the window, arms crossed, guarding the door like a sentinel. At 3:22 p.m., the bailiff stepped out. "They're ready." We filed back in. Nobody had left the gallery. The foreperson, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain, unfolded the paper. "On count 1, guilty." My mother gripped my father's arm. "On count 2, guilty." She read through all 11 counts. Guilty on 9. Not guilty on 2, technicalities in the timeline that the defense had exploited. But 9 out of 11 was everything. It was more than enough. Travis stood motionless. He didn't turn around. He didn't look at the mother who had sacrificed her soul for him. He didn't look at the sisters he had betrayed. When the bailiff approached, he held out his wrists for the cuffs without being asked. They led him through that side door, and he never looked back. Outside, the October sky was gray and cold. Detective Walsh walked up to me, her legal pad tucked under her arm. "You started this, Renee. 5 years ago, you were the one." I shook my head. "No, Megan started this. Paige started this. They all did. I just opened the door." Marcus put his arm around me, pulling me into his warmth. "Let's go home," I said. The aftermath was a slow-motion collapse. Travis was sentenced to 18 years, no parole for 12. Brooks & Sons Automotive closed its doors forever a month later. The building sat empty on Main Street for 6 months until a woman bought it and turned it into a physical therapy clinic. I found that fitting. healing in the same space that had been built on silence. My father had to sell the house on Maple Ridge Road. Without Travis covering the mortgage with the shop's profits, the math didn't work on a retiree's fixed income. He moved into a one-bedroom apartment above the hardware store. I heard he eats at the diner most nights, sitting alone at the counter. My mother left Millbrook entirely. She went to Scranton to stay with a cousin. Not Aunt Linda. Linda cut ties with her the day of the verdict. 12 years of carrying someone else's secret will do that to a person. Paige called me 2 weeks after the trial. The call lasted 6 minutes. She didn't apologize. She wasn't ready for that, and I didn't need her to be. "I'm starting therapy," she said. "Good," I replied. That was it. 2 sentences that mattered. It was enough. Megan graduated from college that spring with a degree in social work. I sent her a card. She sent one back with a note that read, "Thank you for going first." Millbrook doesn't talk about the Brooks family much anymore, but the Methodist Church started a support fund for victims. Anonymous donations. Quiet change. The kind that doesn't make the news but reshapes a town one heart at a time. I never went back to Millbrook. I didn't need to. My home is in Delmer with Marcus and Lily, and a backyard full of dead tomato plants, and a life I built with my own 2 hands. People ask me if I regret reporting my brother. I don't. I regret that I had to. I regret that 7 other people had to carry that weight because my family taught them that silence was the same thing as loyalty. But silence isn't loyalty. Silence is complicity. And I would rather be alone and honest than surrounded by people who need me to lie so they can sleep at night. Forgiveness, I'm working on it, but reconciliation, that's a different conversation, and it's not one I owe anyone. That's my story. 5 years of silence, 7 voices, 1 truth. If this story reminded you that your voice matters, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.